Mental health now really is, so high profile across government, across charities, across industry. There's a real passion and a real ambition to tackle the burden of poor mental health in our society as a whole. So this slide really is just to represent where HSC sit in that kind of wider government picture. We're very much focused on this end of the spectrum, the interventions, the early prevention, the identification of the problems before, the risk problems before they become a health problem. So our area is about influencing employers and workers at work in terms of their attitudes and behaviours towards work-related stress risks, and then to influence people to assess exposures and implement controls to try and prevent the problem becoming a health outcome. So we're very much focused on this end of the spectrum. Then we've got the Department of Health, who come in and look at the treatment and rehabilitation of people who are suffering health problems in terms of early identification, early interventions with health treatments, and the impact and consequences of those treatments on society. And similarly, DWP are in that field of getting people back to work, enabling people to stay at work, looking after people who need benefits and financial support to stay at work or when they can't work. And Public Health England kind of work across the broad spectrum, thinking about the whole society's health, but obviously the opportunities there to influence people at the workplace, because much of our society are actually at work, and it's a real opportunity to influence people's general health and well-being through workplace where you've got a kind of captive audience. If we can get people to work together and realise the strengths and skills that each of these professions, and just to, in case I talk in acronyms because I'm from a regulator, obviously we have the HR profession, occupational health and health and safety, pulling together to contribute a risk-based approach, a good systematic, a good procedural approach with good support from our occupational health colleagues who can help early identify and feedback what they're seeing in their clinics and their health contacts with workers. So really it's about working together to make this work, going forward together and improving our communications with like-minded professionals in our businesses and in our working environment.
What makes you stressed? If you ask people that you work with, they're going to talk about relationships and deadlines and work and and other such things. There's a whole long list of what we perceive of as causing us stress. Now, the second stress trigger is actually what you eat. Here we have someone who is eating a portion of white spaghetti. Their blood sugar level goes up. Whenever your blood sugar goes up, you produce insulin. The dotted line is the insulin, and then the blood sugar level goes down. Here you have the same person not eating white spaghetti, but eating white bread. And in case you didn't know, bread releases its sugar much faster, because when you activate yeast with sugar, you make the equivalent of a 3D string vest, which you stick in the oven for the best part of an hour, while most pasta is really raw wheat, that's cooked for about 6 minutes. And in this case, you can see the blood sugar goes shooting up. The person produces a ton more insulin, and then you get the effect of a rebound blood sugar low. So in effect, this person is hungry again after 2 hours and is a maniac looking for a Mars bar after 3. So when your adrenal levels, when your blood sugar levels dip, it stimulates the release of adrenal hormones. And that's why animals lie around doing nothing until their blood sugar dips. When you have a cup of coffee, what you're actually getting is caffeine, theophylline, and theobromine. Theobromine is the stimulant that's present in chocolate and probably the least harmful of the 3. And what they do is they stimulate your neurons, your brain cells, to make more adrenaline. Actually, there are 3 stimulating neurotransmitters. Dopamine makes you feel good. Noradrenaline, you get a lot more of that if you're in love. And adrenaline you get in the more sort of negative stress state. And because you start to produce lots of these, it's a bit like you turn the music up too loud. Your neurons start to shut down receptors for adrenaline. You should wake up in the early hours of the morning, stimulated by the natural light that enters through the eyes and stimulates your own adrenaline. But if you're a coffee junkie, you can't wake up. So we all have this inner critic, and identifying your inner critic and developing positivity, as Churchill said, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, the optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So that's it. There are lots of things that you can do, some with your diet, some with your lifestyle, some with your sleep, and some with your mindset. We have a clinic in Putney. Our charity does all sorts of work with organizations with stress. Standing at the back at this exact moment in time is Susanna Lawson, my co-author. We will be available in the break and just before lunch. After that, we're leaving. If you want to come and talk to us, see any of the books. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
So, yeah, I'm going to share my story, my journey through mental illness and also suicide as well. And a lot of it is linked to stress. But before I actually go into my story, just to kind of a bit of background really into mental health in the UK. So really for me, it's funny because we were just talking about young people, and my biggest passion out of everything is young people's mental health. As you can see, 75% of all mental health issues actually begin in adolescence. And one of the things that working on at the moment is getting mental health education into schools. It just doesn't make sense. Why? By this time, I wasn't in a good place. It says I tried to hang myself in the school toilet. Suicide had come to the forefront of my mind because it was getting really unbearable living with everything in my head. Unfortunately, there was a long waiting list for therapy, but I couldn't do it with someone. I couldn't look someone in the eyes and do it because it was too, and I'll keep using this word, but it was too embarrassing. So I actually took my video camera out on my phone and I just pressed record, and all this stuff just came out. And I put it on YouTube under a different name back then. I didn't want my family to find out. I put it on YouTube because I was desperate to connect to someone. I wanted to give people an insight into what it's like. And it's really strange reading this book now. It feels like someone else wrote it. You know, I'm in a really different place now, so it's very strange reading this back. In 2015, our documentary, The Stranger on the Bridge, went out on Channel 4. And again, another really great response, and that led to, well, doing what I do now, essentially, which is myself together with Neil. Sometimes we go into schools and prisons and hospitals and businesses to talk about mental health and to get other people to talk and just break down that stigma. Most recently, I've been doing some work around the world, and last year I went to India to do some mental health work out there. To think, you know, we met all those years ago on that bridge in very different circumstances, and we were now running the London Marathon together. Just was, yeah, it was very, just overwhelming. And so we continue. We continue to go and campaign and give talks. And as you heard earlier this year, received an MBE, but it's very much a joint MBE because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Neil. And that is the story of hope and recovery, or my story of hope and recovery. And thank you very much for listening. And we have got some time for questions. Got some time for questions. So if anyone's got any questions, then please do feel free to ask. Thank you.
Fantastic, Johnny Benson.